السلام عليك يا فاطمة. فقلت عليك السلام. قال إني أجد في بدني ضعفا. فقلت له أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به. فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله. صلوات. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت وعليك السلام يا كرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه. السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله. أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء. صلوات. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا كرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه. السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله. أتأذن لي أن أدخل معكم تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. صلوات. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عم رسول الله. فقلت نعم ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. يتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له وعليك السلام يا أخي ووسيي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء. صلوات. ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه. يا رسول الله يتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء. صلوات. فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومى بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي. يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم إنهم مني وأنا منهم فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم واذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. صلوات. وقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنيا ولا أرضا مدحيا ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبتي هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. صلوات. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. صلوات. فقال جبرائيل يا ربي أتأذن لي أن أحبط إلى الأرض ليكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرأك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنيا ولا أرضا مدحيا ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء. صلوات. فقال لأبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. صلوات. فقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله؟ فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. صلوات. فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيهم محموم إلا وفرج الله حمه ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد. بار دیگر صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجهم. مومنین کرام، جیسا کہ آپ کو معلوم ہے آج 7 محرم ہے، اور آج کے دن جو ہے شبیِ اٹلی شہزادہ قاسم ابن امام حسن علیہ السلام برآمد کی جائے گی بعد از نماز اردو. آپ اس میں ضرور شرکت کیجئے، اور اسی طرح دیگر ایام میں بھی باقی شبیہات جو ہیں وہ برآمد کی جائیں گی. اس کی تفصیل جو ہے میں روز بتاتا رہتا ہوں. کل جو ہے 8 محرم کو شبیہ علم پاک مولا غازی عباس علمدار برآمد کیا جائے گا. 9 محرم کی شب کو تابوت علی اکبر علیہ السلام برآمد کیا جائے گا. یہاں شب بیداری ہوگی، اور ایک ہمارے مومن بھائی ہیں وہ ہر سال یہاں پہ نیاز کا اہتمام کرتے ہیں اس رات کے لیے. اس دفعہ بھی انہوں نے کیا ہے بردر حسن اور ان کی فیملی، تو ان کی ریکویسٹ ہے کہ آپ کو آج سے ہی بتانا شروع کر دے تاکہ آپ کو معلوم ہو. آپ یہاں تشریف لائیں، ساری رات شب بیداری کریں، اور نیاز کا خاطر خواہ انتظام ہوگا، اور اس میں ضرور آپ تشریف لائیے گا. اور 10 کو یقیناً تابوت امام حسین علیہ السلام برآمد کیا جائے گا. پروگرام کو آگے بڑھاتے ہیں. اب میں دعوت دیتا ہوں سید جری حسن کو بھی تشریف لائیں اور ذکر محمد و آل محمد فرمائیں. اور حبیب خدا ختم الانبیاء بلند تر صلوات.
بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات. ہے قاسم، ہے قاسم، ہے قاسم، ہے قاسم. کبھی اس ٹکڑے پر ہے قاسم، کبھی اس ٹکڑے پر ہے قاسم. تیری بین غریب نو نہیں بولنا، تیری بین غریب نو نہیں بولنا. تیرے قتل دا منظر ہے قاسم. ہے قاسم، ہے قاسم، ہے قاسم، ہے قاسم. کبھی صحرا دیکھ کے روتی ہے، کبھی غش کا کے گر جاتی ہے. کبھی صحرا دیکھ کے روتی تھی، کبھی غش کا کے گر جاتی تھی. پامال ہوا تھا بائی جہاں، پامال ہوا تھا بائی جہاں. اس خون پہ گر کے ہے قاسم. ہے قاسم، ہے قاسم، ہے قاسم، ہے قاسم. کس شان سے تم دولہات بنے، کس شان سے تھی بارات چلی. کس شان سے تم دولہات بنے، کس شان سے تھی بارات چلی. بیٹھی رہی دلہن حجرے میں، بیٹھی رہی دلہن حجرے میں. آئے نہ پلٹ کر ہے قاسم. ہے قاسم، ہے قاسم، ہے قاسم، ہے قاسم. سنوراز نائی کرب و بلا، تو بنج کفن میں بنج ردا. سنوراز نائی کرب و بلا، تو بنج کفن میں بنج ردا. تیرے قتل دے بعد لائنوں نے، تیرے قتل دے بعد لائنوں نے میری لٹ گئی چادر. ہے قاسم، ہے قاسم، ہے قاسم، ہے قاسم، ہے قاسم. کبھی اس ٹکڑے پر ہے قاسم، کبھی اس ٹکڑے پر ہے قاسم. بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات.
محمد وآل محمد. ماشاءاللہ جری حسن، بہت خوب. آج کے دن کی مناسبت سے آپ نے کلام کا انتخاب کیا. آپ کے سماعتوں کی نظر مولا علی علیہ السلام کی شان میں چند اشعار کہ یہ مرد میداں اجل کا حاکم، حکیم مطلق سپاہ گری کا. یہ مرد میداں اجل کا حاکم حکیم مطلق سپاہ گری کا تمام عالم میں آج سکہ رواں ہے اس کی دلاوری کا یہ اسم اعظم جو لب پہ آئے تو دل دھڑکتا ہے ہر جری کا یہی سکھاتا ہے گر سبھی کو سکندری کا کلندری کا اور یہ انبیاء کا عظیم ناصر یہ میرا وارث یہ میرا ولی ہے اس کی پہچان تجھ پہ واجب یہ مرتضیٰ ہے یہی علی ہے پھر محمد و آل محمد بلندر صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد و عجل فرجہم اما دعوت دیتا ہوں سید علی کو تشریف لائیں اور ذکر محمد و آل محمد فرمائیں بر حبیب خدا ختم الانبیاء بلندر صلوات
پر محمد و آل محمد صلوات شاگٹھری کھول کے جدو فروانو پتر دلاش بکھائی شاگٹھری کھول کے جدو فروانو پتر دلاش بکھائی جنہیں ٹکر لب گئے مینو مقتل چولے آیا وا آویکھ لے تو بر جائی شاگٹھری کھول کے جدو فروانو پتر دلاش بکھائی شاگٹھری کھول کے جدو فروانو پتر دلاش بکھائی ہاتھ لب دی پیر لب دی کدی چہرہ لب دی کوئی ہے ثابت نہیں سی قسم دے پاک بدن دا کہ وہ ماں ترتیب بنائی شاگٹھری کھول کے جدو فروانو پتر دلاش بکھائی شاگٹھری کھول کے جدو فروانو پتر دلاش بکھائی جن ٹکر لب گئے مینو مقتل چولے آیا وا آویکھ لے تو بر جائی شاگٹھری کھول کے جدو فروانو پتر دلاش بکھائی بول تیرے بن رہنو کی وے صحرا لاوا میں صحرا سمجھ کے چادر جدو کھولی قاسم دے لئی وچ لاش نہ پوری آئی شاگٹھری کھول کے جدو فروانو پتر دلاش بکھائی شاگٹھری کھول کے جدو فروانو پتر دلاش بکھائی جن ٹکر لب گئے مینو مقتل چولے آیا وا آویکھ لے تو بر جائی شاگٹھری کھول کے جدو فروانو پتر دلاش بکھائی صلوات
ماشاءاللہ علی مولا آپ کی توفیقات خیر میں اضافہ فرمائے بہت خوب آپ نے کلام پڑھا پاکستان کے ایک شاعر تھے بہت اچھے جان ایلیا ان کا ایک چھوٹا سا کلام آپ کی خدمت میں کہ بلا کے غم اٹھائے جا رہے ہیں بلا کے غم اٹھائے جا رہے ہیں جفا کے تیر کھائے جا رہے ہیں اور فدا کرنے کو دین مصطفیٰ پر علی اکبر سجائے جا رہے ہیں قدم دوش نبوت پر تھے جن کے وہ کانٹوں پر چلائے جا رہے ہیں، اور جہاں بے اذن آتے تھے نہ جبرائیل وہ کاشانے جلائے جا رہے ہیں، اور بٹھاتے تھے نبی کاندھوں پہ جن کو وہ نیزوں سے گرائے جا رہے ہیں، اور ہوا تھا جون قائم جن سے پردہ وہ بازاروں میں لائے جا رہے ہیں۔ میں اس کے ساتھ ہی دعوت دیتا ہوں سید باقر کو تشریف لائیں اور اپنا انتخاب پیش کریں برائے خوشنودی امام زمانہ بلند تر صلوات۔
اور محمد وآل محمد صلوات۔ ریتاں چ دھل گئی مٹیاں چ رل گئی ماں نور آوے قاسم دی مہندی، ریتاں چ دھل گئی مٹیاں چ رل گئی ماں نور آوے قاسم دی مہندی، کبرا دا بابا چادر وچھا کے، کبرا دا بابا چادر وچھا کے چن چن کے پاوے قاسم دی مہندی، ریتاں چ دھل گئی مٹیاں چ رل گئی ماں نور آوے قاسم دی مہندی، ریتاں چ دھل گئی مٹیاں چ رل گئی ماں نور آوے قاسم دی مہندی، مقتل چو سید اے وین پایا کلا اے نانا زہرا دا جایا، مقتل چو سید اے وین پایا کلا اے نانا زہرا دا جایا، کوثر کنارے میرے ٹر گئے سارے، کوثر کنارے میرے ٹر گئے سارے، کیڑا اٹھاوے قاسم دی مہندی، ریتاں چ دھل گئی مٹیاں چ رل گئی ماں نور آوے قاسم دی مہندی، ریتاں چ دھل گئی مٹیاں چ رل گئی ماں نور آوے قاسم دی مہندی، کچھ مہندی گھوڑے سواں چ لے گئے کچھ عہد ٹکڑے مقتل چ رہ گئے، کچھ مہندی گھوڑے سواں چ لے گئے کچھ عہد ٹکڑے مقتل چ رہ گئے، سید مسافر قاسم دی ماتوں، سید مسافر قاسم دی ماتوں، کیویں لکاوے قاسم دی مہندی، ریتاں چ دھل گئی مٹیاں چ رل گئی ماں نور آوے قاسم دی مہندی، ریتاں چ دھل گئی مٹیاں چ رل گئی ماں نور آوے قاسم دی مہندی، ریتاں چ دھل گئی مٹیاں چ رل گئی ماں نور آوے قاسم دی مہندی، خیام اندر جدو مہندی آئی بنڑے دی ماں نے سر خاک پائی، خیام اندر جدو مہندی آئی بنڑے دی ماں نے سر خاک پائی، بنڑی دا بابا بہنی بلا کے، بنڑی دا بابا بہنی بلا کے رو رو وخاوے قاسم دی مہندی، ریتاں چ دھل گئی مٹیاں چ رل گئی ماں نور آوے قاسم دی مہندی، ریتاں چ دھل گئی مٹیاں چ رل گئی ماں نور آوے قاسم دی مہندی، اور محمد وآل محمد صلوات۔ ماواں کربلا دیا ماواں، ماواں کربلا دیا ماواں، ماواں کربلا دیا ماواں، پتراں دیا لاشاں دے ٹکڑے ریاں لب دیاں وچ سہراواں، ماواں کربلا دیا ماواں، ماواں کربلا دیا ماواں، صبر دے مالک نوں سین لیلا آکھے اذن جے دیویں تے، میں صبر دی سانجھ چ اکبر دے सीने चो सांग हटावां मावां करबला दिया मावां मावां करबला दिया मावां आखे माँ कासिम दी माते एहसान करी देर ताईं लड़दा रवीं तेरे टुकड़े मुताबिक वधनिया ने मेरे वीर हुसैन दी सावां मावां करबला दिया मावां मावां करबला दिया मावां जदों कैदी हो के लंगिया मकतल चों वैन ज़ैनब कीता लाशां वल मावां ना वेखन किते रुक ना जावन सावां मावां करबला दिया मावां मावां करबला दिया मावां बर मोहम्मद व आल मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु
جزاك الله باكر صلوات محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I would like to welcome you tonight to tonight's program. First, I would like to ask Sayyid Asad to come forward and tell us about the initiative that we are doing outside regarding the Sabil. Salawat Muhammadin wa Ali Muhammad.
Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad Salawat. نعرہ تکبیر نعرہ رسالت نعرہ حیدری نعرہ حیدری محمد وآل محمد صلوات بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. Alhamdulillah, we are pleased to announce a new initiative that is launched to support Sakina Trust. It's specifically the Sakina Trust Muharram campaign and help those raise funds for work and carried out within our community. As part of this initiative, customizable t-shirts are now available for purchase. This is a wonderful opportunity to show your support while contributing towards the cause. Every t-shirt purchased will help Sakina Trust and the Sakina Trust campaign, which is ongoing to serve our community. Salwa. The prices are very affordable. The kids' t-shirts are going for £7 and the men's adult t-shirts are going for £10. One of the exciting features of this campaign is that the t-shirts are customized with names of preference and designs. We already have a range of different designs available, allowing everyone to choose a style that suits them. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll be able to see. I'll explain that a bit more. By purchasing a t-shirt, you will not only receive the personalized item, but also playing a part in Muharram this year and contributing to the campaign, no matter how large or how small a donation is given or per t-shirt. It will help Sakina Trust move towards their fundraising goals and continue to work for its beneficial work. Salawat. Also, through the help of the t-shirts, the support, it will help raise money to continue providing for Urdu majlises, English majlises, our educational programs and community initiatives and future programs that we're looking for such as trips and many more. Through this initiative and efforts, we hope to raise money for the mosque to engage all the community of all ages and have a positive participation throughout the year. Inshallah, we can continue supporting initiatives like this within our mosque and community through our collective works and strength and unity, encouraging participation through initiatives like this for truly worthy causes. Salawat. So just a bit more on the t-shirts. To place an order, you're going to have to leave your name, size required, design choice, and and what design you would like. Inshallah, tomorrow there will be a sabil in the name of Mullah Abbas, and there will be a stand or stool as well next to the sabil. You can view all the design types, and any request is needed for example, if you want your name on the t-shirt with different designs, that can be done as well. Salwa. So may initiatives like this continue, and inshallah the campaign and Muharram campaign that we're going for this year, inshallah, will be achieved. Salwa.
Jazakallah, brother Asad. Salawat Muhammadin wa Ali Muhammad. Tonight we remember Hazrat Qasim bin Hassan alayhi salam, the young son of Imam al-Hassan al-Mushtaba alayhi salam. Imam Hassan said, "The most intelligent of people is one who prepares for the hereafter." Hazrat Qasim alayhi salam embodied this wisdom. Through young in age, his understanding, faith and devotion were beyond his years. When Imam Hussain alayhi salam asked him how he viewed death in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Qasim famously replied, "Sweeter than honey." These words continue to inspire believers today and remind us that true success lies in obedience in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, loyalty in the Imam of our time, and willingness to sacrifice truth and justice. Tonight, we remember the courage of Hazrat Qasim alayhi salam, who gave his life defending his uncle Imam Hussain alayhi salam on the plains of Karbala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the sincerity of Qasim alayhi salam, the patience of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, the steadfastness of Imam Hussain alayhi salam and his companions. And as we remember the sacrifice of Hazrat Qasim alayhi salam, we'd also like to take this opportunity to thank everybody that has been supporting our programs. As you are aware, our campaign is still running, and there are quite a few shares left, so please do donate, inshallah. So without any further delay, I would like to now invite to the stage with a very loud salawat, SHAYKH Ahmad Haneef. Salawat Muhammadin wa Ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. Could you come closer and fill up this black sheet, if you can? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. بارئ الخلائق أجمعين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله وحبيبه أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى يوم الدين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله والأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Today I'd like to talk about the youth of Karbala. The youth of Karbala. I think it's an important topic because our youth are very important to the survival of our community. And it all depends upon how we train our youth, how we deal with our youth, for them to be able to make that progress, for us to make that progress. You know, you find a lot of situations where there are great movements for social change, but they don't last because the youth are not trained or prepared to carry on that struggle. One example, a very historical example, was around, let's say, the year 2008, when we had that great economic disaster, and you had a whole lot of people knowing that it was speculation on Wall Street and corruption and so forth that had led to that great crash. And, you know, the government borrowed a lot of money and they gave it to bail out the banks because the banks were, quote unquote, too big to fail, even though the banks were the culprit. And they gave that money to the banks to bail them out because they didn't want those banks to crash. There you go, free market, right? And these banks took this bailout money and increased the dividends of their shareholders before rectifying the situation. So a lot of young people, I'm sure some of you would remember this, you know, the guys who were like in their 30s and 40s. And then, by the way, I'll get to that, but there's the word fata, meaning young person. But young person, in terms of age, is defined by between 15 and 45, so think about that. We had a whole lot of young people marching. They call it the Occupy Wall Street movement, or they call it the 99% movement, meaning that the 1% is taking away all of the wealth from the community, and the 99% are, you know, suffering under inflation and high prices and so forth and so on. And this movement was an international movement. You know, you had the 99% movement, or the Occupy Wall Street movement, from Australia to Angola. You know, from Paris to Pittsburgh. You know, all over Europe. And so you had really an international movement of young people, but it fizzled out. It fizzled out. Why it fizzled out? Because either the older generation did not communicate the strategies of struggle to the young people, and the young people did not even think about consulting the older people for advice. And so it failed. And so therefore, you know, it is very important for us to train our young folks in defending our religion on an intellectual basis, you know, which will be under attack. Train our young folks, especially our young girls, to physically defend themselves, because the enemy would want to pick upon who they would assume to be the weakest enemies the weakest individuals in our society. And so, I mean, I'm sure us brothers really don't really have any idea, you know, how a lot of sisters, when they leave their houses in their hijab, they enter into a war zone. They enter into a war zone. They enter into a zone where people look at them as probably weak and vulnerable, and somebody would want to make the mistake of grabbing the hijab off or insulting them and so on. And we have to train our children, our sisters especially, you know, in how to respond to abuse, you know, and how to respond when they stretch out and try to remove their hijab, how to break 2 fingers on these guys. Understand? Because racists and Islamophobes are generalizers. They generalize. You know, one negative encounter with a sister, they're going to generalize to all of them. And so these youths of Karbala are teaching us this, teaching us what is the ideal youth, how they react to tragedy, how they react to oppression, and so forth. So the youth of Karbala represent the archetypes of sacred youth. Everything on Karbala is both reality that is unfolding as well as a symbol of deeper truths, some of them found in other situations, in other times, and so forth. Karbala is how can I put it, an archetype itself, you know, and as an archetype, its light can be found in every situation where you have real oppression. And real oppression involves bloodshed, involves killing of the innocent, involves killing of children and mothers and women, involves killing of men, it involves the killing of non-combatants. And this killing is not just simply the taking of life. Sometimes they take your spiritual life from you. Sometimes they take your morals and your values from you. That is just as bad, or maybe even worse, than actually taking our lives themselves. So Karbala is a microcosm of this. Karbala is the archetype of this. You know, Ali Asghar, for example, is a symbol of the millions of children who have been massacred all over the world. You know, Zainab is the archetype of those great journalists and writers and witnesses, you know, and filmmakers and so forth, who have witnessed these types of great oppressions and have depicted it, photographed it, filmed it, wrote about it, and so forth, to be able to communicate it to others. So Karbala is, in a sense, a microcosm of all of this, the supreme example of the role of youth. As we said before, it is a microscopic example of unveilings of the interplay of the divine names, and the arrival at resolution, the arrival at balance, the arrival at perfection, by removing of the negative forces that are disrupting our world. So Karbala is not just a tragedy, it's a tragedy, but it is also a divine disclosure. It is a divine disclosure of these names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and a divine disclosure of the spiritual and achieved being into how they deal with these types of issues. So Karbala is a scene of, for example, shuja'ah, of bravery. It is a scene of ikhlas, or sincerity, and it is a scene of fana, or martyrdom. So every youth fighting for Imam Hussein alayhi salam exhibits some kind of a character that is particular to that particular youth. So for example, and we'll get to him, Ali Akbar, for example, represents the image of prophetic beauty and noble perfection. That's what he represents. And I won't want to talk too much about that because I want to talk about Ali Akbar later. And then we have, for example, Qasim, who we are going to talk about later this evening, who, when asked about how he saw death as sweeter than honey. And so Qasim represents, for example, that divine name of Sabur, of patience, acting through innocent resolve. An innocent person, because these guys are all kids. Qasim is about 13 years old himself as well. You know, they are not battle strategists. You know, they are motivated by that divine love of the truth. Young people are moved more by truth than by old people. You know, in the war between Iran and Iraq, for example, there's a story of a young boy named Hossein Fahmideh. Hossein Fahmideh was, I would say, barely 16. You know, he might have been much younger, maybe 14 and 16. And he lied about his age because he wanted to fight and defend his country. That's young people for you, okay? You know, when they see trouble coming, when they see a battle coming, they will stand up and fight. One of the reasons why a lot of young people make gangs and join gangs and so forth is because this spirit of futuwa comes from the word fata, you know, and fata is defined as a type of, it's not any youth, you know, any youth is called shab, you know, just youth, you see, but a fata is a kind of a youth, you know, who has wisdom, who has perception, who knows the difference between right and wrong. This is a fata, you know, who sees themselves as spending their lives fighting or striving towards defending and helping those people who are weaker than them. This is fata. And from that you get the word futuwa, you know, the state of being a fata. You know, one of the first fata that we encounter in the Holy Quran is Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam. You know, Hazrat Ibrahim is sitting down and he is thinking about these idols that his community or his society worships. He's thinking about it. Okay? That's youth. What Western modern society wants to do is to take away the power of critical thinking from our youth. And also our organizations aid in that type of thing. You know, when, for example, youth ask questions that, one could even call it dangerous, because they're thinking, you know, the response of those who are older and stuff like that say, don't think like that, right? No, it is to engage with them. You know, maybe you yourself would learn something from dealing with that particular question. You see? So, futuwa is translated into English as chivalry. When you think of chivalry, what is a chivalrous person? A chivalrous person is usually a term that is associated with a knight. I'm talking about these weak knights, you know, who get a knighthood for singing songs and stuff like that. In the past, you know, a knight in Arabic was called a faris, you know, a horseman who was almost undefeatable. This was a knight, you know, and a knight was known for their self-sacrificing nature. You know, knights were always living on the edge, always living between death and life, you know, and would always gladly accept death, you know, in order to preserve nobility and fighting for the truth. And this is what a fata is. And here we have Ibrahim alayhi salam, you know, among the people of Nimrud, and he's looking at all these gods that, you know, that they worship. You know, and these people were more like star worshippers type of people. You know, and so Ibrahim alayhi salam in the Holy Quran, you know the story. He looks at a star and he says, this star is my Lord. But then the star set, the star disappeared in the morning, and he said, I do not love that which it sets, because he knows the Lord does not set. God doesn't die, not even temporarily. And then he goes further up now and he looks at the moon and he says the same thing. Surely this is brighter than the star. And the moon did the same thing. And he stops following the moon. And then he sees the sun. And after the sun set and stuff like that, the sun is the most majestic thing in the sky. Then he comes to the conclusion that my Lord is none of these things. And he goes to his people and tries to educate them, but they're giving him a lot of pushback. And he waits for one day when they had a festival and they had to go out of town. And he stayed behind and he took an axe and he broke all of the idols and he left the biggest one standing. Very interesting, the biggest one, of course, because, idol worship is a certain form of materialism, okay, material worship. In this society right now, we have idol worshipers, but we don't have idol worshipers like in the old times where, they worship something that they made with their own hands, they carved out of wood or they carved out of stone and so forth. In today's world, people worship ideas. People worship ideas. Okay? Those are their idols. People worship the idol of, for example, freedom. Freedom without qualification. Okay? Freedom without qualification. Any kind of freedom. As long as they say, I am not doing harm to anybody else, okay, I should be free to do whatever I want, to say whatever I want, to act however I want. Okay? So freedom is one of them. This idea of freedom is not qualified. They don't define to us what freedom we should be fighting for or we should be living according to it. We define freedom, these people in this society define freedom in terms of whatever feels good to you, and you can show that you are physically hurting somebody else, then you should be free to do it. So this is one of the idols of the modern world. They even have Braveheart talking about freedom when he's being killed in the movie, right? This is an idol. Democracy is an idol. Okay, if you don't have democracy, you're a tyranny. End of story. If you don't have democracy, you're a tyranny. End of story, which is not true. This is another freedom. Another false freedom we worship is progressivism. Okay, or progressism. And what do we mean by progressism? Human beings evolve. Human beings become better than they were in the past. And we continue evolving like that. And so when we talk about colonialism, for example, and what they have done to us in colonialism, they will look at us and say, that's in the past. That's our ancestors. We did this, but we were worse off because we were further down the evolutionary ladder than we are right now. Okay? And when we're looking at and we're seeing today is the same colonialist type of behavior that is happening in the world. And what are these guys doing? They are supporting it, they are defending it, and so on. Just as when, for example, in the United States, in America, North, South, Middle America, in Africa, in Asia, and so forth, they were massacring tens of millions of people, and taking their land, taking their resources. Exactly the same thing that is happening now. Exactly the same thing. And they want to tell us when we suffer it that, don't dwell on this because we are now advanced. You walk downtown and you see all them statues, going towards, the parliament buildings and so forth. Every single one of these guys were mass murderers and land stealers and so forth and so on. All their heroes are questionable. All their heroes. And what they do is they try to pin on Islam especially, excuse me, try to pin on Islam especially all of the atrocities that Christianity did on the rest of the world. You know, when they say Islam spread by the sword, it means they spread Christianity by the sword. Okay? You know, when they say about Islam cuts off the head of the apostate, cuts off the head of the person who rejects Islam, it's because they would kill people at programs and witchcraft trials and so forth and so on. They would kill people because those people believed in something different to them within the frame of Christianity. As they say, every accusation is a confession. If Western society recognized that Islamic society and Islamic culture was part of Western society as it was part of Eastern society, they wouldn't have that kind of hang-up. They wouldn't. You know, where one side of, you know, one group of humanity is still primitive, you know, still throwing their human waste on the street and so forth, and another part of humanity who had, you know, flush toilets and sewer systems and so forth and so on. You know, it is one group of people. When you look at Europe, for example, why is Europe considered to be a continent? Think about it. Okay? It's the only continent that I know of that is separated from another continent by a river. Most continents, all the continents, are separated from each other by wide stretches of ocean. This is a river. The Bosphorus Strait is a river. On the left-hand side, or the western side, is Europe, and on the right-hand side is Asia. No, Europeans are Asians. There's no such country as Europe. They want to be different. You know, that's why they erased Islamic culture. They erased, for example, what the Darul Islam in Baghdad, for example. You know, they erased from history the Islamic culture in Spain. Brothers, Islamic culture in Spain is part of Europe. But Europe has had this tendency all along of making themselves special and looking down on everybody else. So nationalism is another aspect of a modern idol worship. You know, scientism is another aspect of modern idol worship. And why do you say scientism? You know, why? Because they believe that science is separate from religion. Whereas from an Islamic point of view, religion and science are brothers. Religion educates science, and science educates religion. You know, there's a mutual kind of relationship with them, you see? But they use science to define themselves. Whereas, for example, in Islam, science comes out of culture. Science comes out of belief. For them, culture, belief, and identity, etc., comes out of science. So, for example, you know, when we talk about heterosexuality, and you need a male and a female to have a kid, okay? And now you have a science that says you can change the gender of a man. At that particular point, they have a problem in defining human beings. And that was how they were doing things. They were using this type of argument to start their programs against people. Okay? You know, oh, Mr. Director of a university, could you tell me what is a woman? Or could you tell me what is a man? And here this person is an educated person stumbling over themselves to try to say what a man or a woman is, because they want to incorporate in their definition the artificial men and the artificial women that they had created in a hospital, and it wasn't a very good job either. Science is defining for them who they are. Science is an idol. So the idols of the Western world are these things. They are ideas. They are points of view. They no longer are idols of wood and stone. And here we have Hazrat Ibrahim himself criticizing the idols of that time, but it tells us how our youth should be trained to understand and criticize the idols of this time. That's the issue of youth. That's the power of youth. And if you guys, a lot of us, the OGs in this room would know, that, 40 years ago, we saw great changes in society, and it was all youth running the show. All youth being very, very critical. And we're talking about youth 15 years old and 16 years old being very intellectually critical of the system in which we live. And when they found that out, that youth was so potent, they decided to dumb them down. And they dumbed them down with drugs. They dumbed them down with depraved music. They made them become obsessed with fashion. They split them up in gangs to war against each other. And the more you belong to an oppressed group, the more intense that this propaganda and this cultural assault was. Give salawat to the Holy Prophet Muhammad and his family. Yeah. Sorry, the water went the wrong way. So, Ibrahim, alayhi salam, when these guys had gone on their religious gathering, he took this axe and he broke up all of these statues and hung the axe on the neck of the big one. And this is symbolic. This indicates something. Okay, the axe is the criticism. The axe is the criticism. Okay, the breaking up of the idols is the effect of proper criticism. And when I say criticism, I don't mean just to criticize. I mean to analyze, to break down somebody's argument and destroy it. That's criticism. And the axe around the neck of the big one represents the law of might is right. And so they come back from their pilgrimage or whatever they went on, and they see all of their idols all broken up with the axe hanging around the neck of the big one. And they say, "Who has done this?" And the answer was, "We heard a fata speaking bad about your idols, and his name is Ibrahim." And so they call Ibrahim, alayhi salam, and they asked him, "Did you do this?" And his response is, "Where's the evidence?" The evidence is on the neck of this big one. Well, ask him then. This is criticism. This is channeling the rationality of the belief. Ask the big one. Why? Because it's around his neck, and they're all idols. They all have power. Don't you believe they have power? Don't you believe that they can speak? Ask them. And they realize the falsity of their belief. Young people can do this. We have seen this in the 60s in the United States of America, for example. We have seen this in the 60s in the Caribbean. You have seen this in the 60s in India. You have seen this in the 60s in many countries in Africa. Young people, 15, 14, 13, 20, yes. All having this power of and freedom to criticize and to come to a truer conclusion as to what the world should be. So Qasim is a symbol of spiritual youth, not hardened by ego. It's an innocence inside where they are open to the light, where when they see the light, they gravitate towards it with all their soul. And it's very important for the continuation of the struggle, the spreading of the deen. You know, it's an occasion where, you know, some of the followers of Imam As-Sadiq alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, came to visit him from Iraq. And he asked them, he said, how is Amrana? They used to call it Amrana, you know, our thing, because it would speak in code, you know, meaning the Shia movement and so on. How is our Shia movement in Iraq? You know, and the response was, well, it's not going anywhere really. You know, it's kind of stagnant, you know what I mean? You have a whole lot of older guys, you know, being involved and so forth. And the Imam asked them, why don't you take it to the youth? Why don't you take it to the youth? Indeed, he says, their hearts are waiting to be planted with the right ideas. Their hearts are like a soil where these right ideas will grow. We don't just teach our kids on a Saturday, brothers and sisters. We do not just teach them how to read the Quran in Arabic, you know, the stories of the prophets and so forth, without reference to the environment in which we live. You don't just teach people things in a vacuum where it just hangs there without any reference point in your experience, in your life. We want to teach our children about Imam Ali alayhi salam, so they want to become Imam Ali alayhi salam. They want to start to pretend to be Imam Ali alayhi salam. We want them to be infused with this knowledge, with this awareness to take this thing forward. So when we talk about Qasim, for example, you know, Qasim, he acts out of love. He acts out of love. He doesn't act out of experience. He's a young man, but he loves justice. You know, he loves the madhlumin, the oppressed. He loves the idea of fighting for them. When Hussein Fahmideh was about 13 years old, 14 years old, he is in the military, and they're going on some kind of patrol, you know, some kind of advance, and they were pinned down by an Iraqi tank that was firing machine guns at these guys. And they couldn't move because of this tank. And Hussein Fahmideh strapped on himself a whole lot of grenades and threw himself in front of that tank and destroyed that tank for those soldiers to pass. Imam Khomeini, rahmatullahi, said about Hussein Fahmideh, he says, I'm not the leader of this revolution. Hussein Fahmideh is. Kids like Hussein Fahmideh are. These were young people on the battlefield who were getting spiritual insight that an ordinary Arif Billah, an ordinary Waliullah would take 40 years of strenuous spiritual exercise to arrive at vision of the truth. These were the people. And it's their very innocence and their very sacrifice that increases and injects love for them in our community. Give salawat to the Holy Prophet Muhammad and his family. Youth is that freshness, that guarantee that our community has a future. And the oppressive societies in the world, for them to guarantee their own continuity, it is very, very important to distract the youth or to bring the youth on their side. These young martyrs and whatever youth that are standing up for right and justice, they are futuwa. They embody the true meaning of what a fatah is. Like Hazrat Ibrahim, a person who analyzes, contradicts, and refutes the errors that are prevalent in society and are willing to stand up and oppose it by spreading that message, and if necessary, to die for that message. And so the fatah on the plains of Karbala shows us how these youth will die to preserve this message. Karbala is the eternal battle between the hero and tyranny. It is this replay of this archetypal struggle where we have the duty to fight for the cosmic order against chaos. This is our responsibility. We do not wait for somebody to act upon this responsibility for us. This is our responsibility. And one of the things that Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi revolutionized among the Shias is this idea of passive waiting for the Imam to come to fix your problems for you. And he said it doesn't work like that. You have to start to try to fix your problems yourself. And it is in the process of you trying to fix your problems yourself that the Imam will come and help you with it. And this is a problem you find in a lot of our centers, okay? They want us, we are in the midst of all kinds of crazy stuff. It's creeping into our own communities. We have alphabet people in our own communities, right? We have these people being so bold, to walk into the masjid and everybody knows that they were a guy before and go in the women's section and sit down. And everybody don't know what to do. They have no idea what to do. So these are the things that are encroaching in our communities, and we need to have a resistance to it. We need to have a proper criticism of it based upon our criticisms of their new idols. And we have to devise ways of response to this. And these are things that we need to be seriously thinking about. People come to us, these personal issues, not realizing that, these personal issues add up to social issues in our community, where a lot of people are going through this, man. A lot of people. Give salawat to the Holy Prophet Muhammad and his family. So the battle of the youth in Karbala reflects a spiritual resistance to oppression. That strength doesn't lie in power, but in adhering to unwavering principles, even against impossible odds. This is where strength lies. Standing up for your principles. You don't have to have governmental power. You don't have to be the head of the police force. You don't have to have an army. You just stand up for principles. And in standing up for principles, you are guaranteed to be victorious, even at the end of your life. Even if your life will come to an end, you stand up for principles. These principles go down in history, and people remember this, and they are going to be revived by this. And this is what Karbala means. To be able to do this, you need to have pure intentions. You can't get into the struggle against oppression by adhering to the values of that oppression itself. You can't do that. You have to be able to go into this in a way, in a pure way, where you can, in your own integrity, be able to criticize and demolish these things. They indicate, for example, the nobility of sacrifice. You know, when Qasim says, you know, death in the path of God is sweeter to me than honey. You know, where Aun and Muhammad, for example, are employing their mother to force Imam Hussein alayhi salam to send them into the battlefield. You know, all of these things show what the pure youth is. This is what all of our youth are on the inside. You know, you have the statement by the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he said, everybody is born a Muslim and it's only their parents that make them into a Christian or a Jew or what have you. It's the same thing. All of our youths are born in the path of futuwa. It is our parents, our society that tells us you can't win this one. Stay out of trouble. Keep your head down. Go make some money and everything's going to be all right. You can have many dua kumays in your house while the world is burning on around us. We have to, you know, it just goes back to why we are here. Why are we here? Why are we in this country? Why are we in America? Why are we in Australia? Why are we here? Why should we be here? Should we be here just to make money? Should we be here just to get an education? Should we be here just to get a nice, quiet life? Why should we be here? The only reason why we should be here is to bear witness to these people, what the truth is. That's why we should be here. Because on the day of judgment, the Imams will bear witness against us that they were here and they did nothing to spread your word. Nothing to spread your word. Right now, sitting in here, I can only identify maybe about 3 guys in here who are not Pakistani, and I'm one of them. And I've been coming to this center since about, I don't know, maybe 2010 or something like that. And I always leave a message. I always leave a message wherever I'm going. You know, try to bring one of your workmates or one of your schoolmates who's not a Muslim, but you like them very much. Bring them here to be in company of believers, because sometimes being in company of the believers is enough to bring people into Islam. I knew one young woman when I used to work at the Islamic Center of England, young white girl. All her friends were Iraqi. Okay, she used to hang out with these Iraqi friends. Huh? I don't think these sisters ever tried to convert her to Islam. She'd see them get up to pray and stuff like that, you know, and she likes it, and she want to pray too. And I saw this transformation in front of my very eyes, okay? After a while, this sister started to come with them. She was coming with them to the Islamic Center regularly, you know. Next thing you know, I'm seeing this girl wearing some serious hijab. You know, she even could talk Iraqi Arabic. Just by association. Your heart knows what is true. Your heart knows what is true. You don't have to try to talk to them about Tawheed. Just bring them right here and sit down and let's talk about anything. And it has a profound effect upon them. That was 2010. Where are we today? Still about 3 of us inside of here, and I'm one of the 3. What are we doing? We're not projecting. Shias don't project. Okay? Shias don't project. They project inwardly. We're introverts. And that's why we're not spreading out and moving outside. Give salawat to the Holy Prophet Muhammad and his family. Okay, so now I'd like to talk a little bit about Qasim. Qasim is the son of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Qasim is said to be a very, very beautiful boy. Qasim was about 13 years old. Qasim wants to go out there and fight. All of the companions are dead. This is the time of now the Bani Hashim, who are about to rise up and defend Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Qasim goes to Imam Hussein alayhi salam and says to him, Ya Amu, oh my uncle, I'd like to fight for you. Imam Hussein alayhi salam responds to him, Qasim, I am your wali now. You know, I have the responsibility to look after your welfare. I have the responsibility to keep you safe. How can I send you to go to the battlefield and die? I can't do this. I have a responsibility to my brother for you. Qasim is so upset, he goes to his mother, Farwa. He tells her about his frustration. Farwa says to him, you know, your father foresaw something like this will happen. And he wrote a letter for you to give to your uncle. And in the letter it says, Qasim, I know I want you to be there to defend my brother, your uncle Hussein, when things go wrong. I want you to represent me on the battlefield, Qasim. And he took this to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and Imam Hussein alayhi salam relented, he agreed. But Imam Hussein alayhi salam, his heart was broken, his heart was torn, because he knew what he was sending this young man to. And he said that Qasim's legs were too short for the stirrups of his horse. And while he was walking, the sword was dragging behind him. Such a small guy Qasim was. But he was a very, very beautiful young man. And when Qasim gets on his horse and he goes out there towards the enemy looks at him and says, how could we fight such a beautiful boy? How could we destroy such a beautiful boy? And consternation arrived in the enemy. At any rate, the battle started, the one-on-one, and Qasim was defeating quite a few of them until the thirst and the weakness overcame him. And Qasim was felled by the soldiers. And falling off his horse, he called, oh, uncle, come to help me. Come to my rescue, Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And Abbas heard Qasim's voice, and they ran towards him. But as they were running towards him, many of the soldiers started to stampede. They started to run away in front of Imam Hussein and Abbas, and their hooves trampled Qasim's body on the ground. Qasim's body was broken up into little pieces, just like them bombs falling in Gaza, breaking up the bodies of these little children into pieces. They said that Imam Hussein alayhi salam had to gather up the remains of Qasim in his abba and folded this abba and took Qasim's body to his mother the way it was. The destruction of Qasim indicates again the deep enmity and deep lack of care for people, young people standing up for the truth. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah wa al-wahi allati hallat bifina'ik. Alayka minni salamullahi abadan ma baqit wa baqiya al-layl wa nahar. Assalamu ala al-Hussein wa ala Ali ibn al-Hussein wa ala awlad al-Hussein wa ala ashab al-Hussein. Salawat.